All right, another day working on the Tacoma. It's dark outside, so I'm gonna do my best with the lighting. Today we're gonna work on brakes. As you can see, it's not supposed to look like that. So one of the things that the Tacoma needs is new brakes up front. We'll take a look at the brakes in the rear when we get to the rear suspension. But right now, based on that rotor, I know that the caliper isn't compressing like it's supposed to. So we got new brake calipers, we got new brake pads, we got new soft brake lines, and we got new rotors. So we're gonna take that apart. If this is something you're interested in, please stick around for the video. So these brake calipers are kind of set up differently. They have a pin system on the back. And that way you can actually take the brake pads out from the top, put the pins back in and not have to take the caliper off. Since we're taking the caliper off altogether, we'll kind of show how you get the pins out, and then we'll take the caliper off with just a couple bolts on the back. So the first step is we got to take this spring pin out. And they actually hold the pins in. And you can just pull it out. We got a new one with the set that we have. You can see the pin. This just holds these pins in place. Okay, once the pin comes out, remember how this is set. So it's going to be facing down. We're going to take, that's the retaining piece for the brake pads. We'll just set that aside. And then we can just tap out the other side. Now one thing you may notice is I did turn the steering wheel out so that the caliper bolts are accessible, and those are two 17 millimeters. Alright, and then the caliper will just rotate itself off. So the pads were not in bad shape. Just the caliper wasn't compressing like it was supposed to. So one of the great things about these Toyotas is they're 4-piston calipers, which means you got a considerable amount of clamping force. You can see kind of in the light there. The rotor is just sitting on top of the collar. You just gotta, it'll pop right off. But the first thing we're gonna do at this point now is take a look at the new calipers, and then I'll kind of show you what's included in that box of stuff. So I get a lot of my stuff from Napa. I'm a fan of their parts. Their remanufactured parts are in good shape, and I like their stuff, so I buy a lot of my stuff from Napa. So what I got here is a remanufactured 4-piston caliper. It comes with a new nut with crush washers for the new hose. You get 2 new pins, retainer, and then that spring that we took off first. I went back with just a stock rotor. Toyota puts on a stock rotor, so I'm putting back on what they put on there. You can get slotted and vented and all the other things. I just don't think they do that much better for the application that we have. So the next step is we're going to take the brake line loose and get it ready to get switched out. So we're going to assemble the caliper and the brake line first, because I want to get this set up ready to go back on as soon as we can, so that we don't lose all the brake fluid that we have. Something to just keep note of is that when you're doing these kind of changes, to make sure that someone is paying attention to the fluid in the master cylinder, because you do not want that master cylinder to go dry, and we'll let gravity push the air out of the brake line into the new caliper, and then we'll pressure bleed everything else from that point. So just be mindful of how much brake fluid you have in your master cylinder. So we got to take off the bolt that holds the brake line to the front spindle, and that's a 12mm socket. I always put the bolts back in because that way I'm not going to lose them, and nothing's going to get damaged or anything like that. So if we take a look at this brake line, there are a couple parts to it. There's this piece that goes into the clamp on the frame, and it's got a threaded insert as well as a retaining clip on the back side. And then we have the banjo fitting, which is what goes on either side of the caliper bolt. So we'll take a look at how that goes together real fast. All right, so behind this is a clip, and I don't know if you can see that really good. We'll try. You look right down, there's a clip right there. So I just take a pair of needle nose pliers and put it on that clip and kind of wiggle it off, and that seems to work pretty good. So we got that clip out, and I'll show you kind of how that works. So the clip sits into this groove right here behind that, and that's what holds it in place. So this is a 10mm nut, but it's kind of in a really awkward spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 10mm nut off and fish that line back through, and then take this out when I have it out. So in order to block off the line, I'm just taking the little rubber cap that goes over the brake bleeder, and I'm going to push it up in that fitting, and that way it should kind of stem the flow of the brake fluid. All right, so now we can take it and work on it here and not worry about messing this line up. So this is 17mm and this is 10, and we'll just take that apart and get that piece out. So you can imagine trying to do that up there on the wall. So what we'll do is we'll take this and put this into the new end, and then fish it back through, and then connect it back up to the top. All right, so we're going to get the caliper stuff straight. And there is the banjo bolt. So it has two washers. One goes up against this piece, and then the brake line goes in the middle. So it has a little piece on it that goes into this hole, and that's how it orients itself. So you got to make sure that there's a washer between this flange and here, and then a washer there. And then that fits right in that hole. And that's what orients this hose so that it's at the right location for how the brake caliper goes on. And again, this is stamped on the right side. This is on the right side of the vehicle. So this is an 11mm bolt, and we're just gonna tighten it down, and we'll get the torque setting on it later. I'll show you the difference between the brake rotors real quick. So this is the new one. So you got to remember on those, they do have a oil coating that you need to take some brake cleaner and spray that off before you mount it. But here's the old one. You can see where the brake pad wasn't even hitting there. Then on the inside, it's the same. So these definitely need to be replaced. All right, so we're gonna mount the caliper back on just loosely, and then we'll make that brake line connections. I think it's just easier to have that all on there. So we cleaned our rotor off, and that just slides right back on. And then we got those two 17mm bolts that hold the caliper assembly together. And we're going to take our caliper assembly, and those two bolts are going to set. Alright, so the same end of the hose, we'll take our 17mm wrench, alright, so we're going to put this 12mm bolt back on. So we had loosened this bleeder bolt to let brake fluid flow from the master cylinder into the line to kind of help push some of the air out. All right, so the brake pads just slide in from the back. The red dot goes on the inside, and the blue dot goes on the outside. So sometimes you may need to just open the rotor up some, and it'll slide right in. And just remember that the pins have got to go through these two holes, so these are the ones that face out. So the pins just kind of go through. Take a little pair of needle nose pliers and work that brake pad back out. And let's do the same on this side. Now remember our clip, so this set riding on that on the inside, and then the pin goes on the inside of there, so, and that's what holds all that together. All right, and then last but not least, we have the retaining pin. Now this, if you remember, hooks in down there and then slides into these holes. And so there's the assembly. So the pins hold the brake pad in. This is your anti-rattle clip, and then this holds the pins in place to keep them from backing out. And that's it. The only thing we have left to do is just bleed the brakes, and you can either use a machine, or I'm going to do just get another person to go step on the brake pads on the brake pedal until there are no more air bubbles left in the system. And the other side, the driver's side, is the same. So that's kind of where we are. So we'll get that done and then kind of wrap things up. All right, so we got everything taken care of. The driver's side was not as bad as the passenger side was, but just to kind of go over a couple things. So the torque setting on that, which is the banjo bolt for the brake hose to the caliper, is 22 foot-pounds, and that'll crush those two copper washers just perfectly to make the seal. And then the two 17mm bolts that hold the caliper on, they're torqued to 91 foot-pounds. So those are the two torque settings, and yeah, that's it. So a pretty simple job. The hardest thing was kind of getting the brake hoses kind of put together. Other than that, the rotors pop right off, clean them up real good, load the calipers up, bleed the brakes, put the tires back on, go for a test drive, and it should be good to go. So definite need on our part for those brakes, as we had one side that wasn't even working well. So it'll be great to have good stopping power. They're gonna have to come off again once we do some of the suspension stuff, but that's gonna come later. So just wanted to show you that's how you change the calipers, pads, rotors, and brake hoses on your 1997 or 1995 to 2004 first gen Tacoma. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.